Looking for a cosmic adventure like no other? Zatswan, Multiversal Guardian is a high-stakes comic book journey through the multiverse with stunning art and an unforgettable hero. Get your copy today in ebook and paperback formats. Link in the description.
Hi everybody, Neil Allen here, the creator of Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, the 130-page cosmic fantasy graphic novel that you can pick up on Amazon in the link in the description. You can get it in ebook format, which is only $2.99, or you can get it in paperback. If you have Kindle Unlimited, it's also free. So do check that out in the link in the description on Amazon. And I am currently working on the next volume of Zatswan, Right Before Your Eyes, working on coloring in the character Alakazona. I'm using Derwent Procolour colored pencils to color her in. I did color in Alakazona over here using Derwent Color Soft colored pencils. So same company, different line of colored pencils. And I am going to see, like, I know the characteristics of the different pencils, but you know, one thing colored pencil fiends like me love to do is put pencils against other pencils. So I just colored one figure in with Color Soft, and now I'm going to do the other with Procolour. So while I'm doing this, I am going to ramble on about comic books. So I said one thing in another video of mine about making Hal Jordan Parallax, in case you're curious. I said that I don't tend to like these Marvel and DC event comics, which obviously a lot of people seem to, because Marvel and DC goes hard into events. Like, they're always doing some kind of event. And I said something in that video that got me to think when I looked back at it. I said that why I do not like the events is because they're like big on spectacle and a threat that oftentimes is somehow going to rock a universe some way or another. And they're low on character, though. Like, that's what I don't like about them. They're not really about the characters much. They're just about, oh my god, like, look what's happening here, like somebody died and this type of stuff. And so it got me thinking. I could get a sharper point on this pencil. You should keep your colored pencils at like a very sharp point. So that got me to think, why are people these days so many people when it comes to Marvel and DC? I know not everybody, but a lot of people I know are just kind of checked out, a lot of people are kind of checked out emotionally. Like, they either don't read the comics at all, and they just buy it out of habit, or because they have like completionist tendencies, or they're just like not reading them at all, or they're just reading them like out of like a habit, a rote thing to do, and but they're not necessarily excited about what they're reading. No, what they tend to be more excited about, what tends to get people like involved more, is some kind of nonsense behind the scenes, like, oh wow, look. And I'm not saying support, like, I'm not talking about this type of topic one way or another. I'm just bringing it out as an example. Oh wow, look, there's like a trans writer writing a book that I probably wouldn't even read, but DC hired a trans writer. Look at this. Like, that seems to get people like involved, or somebody sent a death threat, or they made Superman gay. Things like this. It's not about, oh wow, how's Superman going to deal with this problem in the comics, or what's going to happen next in this story. That doesn't seem to be what really that doesn't seem to be what people are talking about. Now, there are readers like that, but that just does not seem to be what people are getting enthusiastic about. Yet when you look at other, um, I was getting my point very sharp. You should have a very sharp, I think I said that already, but you should have a very sharp tip on your colored pencils, typically. Um, what's like gets people, so basically it's all this background noise that people get excited about one way or another, and they're getting excited about the wrong things, not about the story developments, not about the characters, about this kind of other stupid stuff. And I got to thinking, like, why is it like that? Because what I was saying is that when you look at other um, comic book, other types of comic books, like, say, webtoon or manga, no, people are just 100% there for the stories. They don't care about the personal lives of the people making them, typically. So, what's going on here, actually? I got to thinking about it, and I think I may have actually come up with the reason why things have gotten to this point. And I guess, like, knowing that is handy for, for a couple things. Either coming up with a solution, or in my case, just having that knowledge so I never get in the same spot with my own story here, Zatswan. And what I believe is happening, well, first let me lead up to that. I think this is rooted in, well, I think it goes all the way back to probably the 1990s mainly. I think it's rooted largely in short-term gains that cause long-term damage. I think, and comics is like, frequently wrestling with things that do that. Things like variant covers, like 9 billion variant covers, things like relaunching new number ones all the time. I think like this issue comes from that same school of problem, so to speak, which is like doing short-term things that get diminishing results each time, and oftentimes over time just cause long-term damage to the comics or the business or the property, the intellectual property. So I think let's go back. We'll use DC Comics as an example. Let's go back to, say, 2004. I think that is exactly when actually Dan Didio became editor-in-chief at DC. And like the first thing he did was, one of the first things was Identity Crisis. And then that was this kind of shocking, scandalous story, about the Justice League. And then you go from Identity Crisis to things like 52 and Infinite Crisis and Countdown and Final Crisis. And it's just like one event after another event with these event-driven lead-ins, you know what I mean? And it's kind of driving this. What I noticed was happening there is that it was becoming less about the characters in this universe, like, say, DC Comics, and it was becoming more about the universe. So I said that, let's pause there. I said that in that other video. I didn't care for events because there's not much character in them. It's just a bunch of stakes. And I can't really, if I don't care about the characters, then there are no stakes for me. Now, some will say, yeah, events aren't supposed to be about the characters. You're supposed to read the characters like solo comic books for that. You're not supposed to like turn to the event for that. Well, here's the kicker, though. Here's the real kicker. And this is what I think got things into the spot they're in. What happened? Well, there were a couple things, actually. Before I pose that question, let me say, I think so. Essentially, DC started following where the money is. The money at the time, the short-term money, was like, okay, people want to see these events and this like universe, the story that's about this universe. Less character, more universe status quo shaking. You know what I mean? Less about like how Superman is dealing with a problem at the Daily Planet or something like that. So what the question I was going to ask is, what happens when the regular books that are supposed to be about the characters start being written in formulas like the events? And let me actually get to that. So let's think about an event, right? So typically in these events, you often don't. One, you don't see many of those character moments, do you? It's about the spectacle, and it's about the threat, and it's about how this might shake up some kind of universe or something. It's not about like the characters too much, not about those character moments, not about that relationship building, not about that relationship maintenance, not about the supporting characters of these heroes often. Not often. And you rarely see the heroes in their personal lives. You might see it here or there, but they're usually just in their superhero guise. And they're constantly worried about this threat. And so you're getting less and less and less of the characters that way. So what I believe happened is that these comic companies started writing the regular books like they were events. Another thing that kind of got my attention is when I was saying in that Turn Hal into Parallax video that Green Lantern was like low on character and big on spectacle. It was written, like when Jeff Johns was writing it, it was written as if it was like an event, even when it technically may not have been. It like had that same DNA, that same type of formula, where it was low on the character moments, big on the spectacle. So what we're seeing in these comics these days, and this is a thing that is known, and I've seen fans talk about it, what happened to the supporting cast of these characters? They started to get phased out as if they didn't really matter. Just like you often see in events, that doesn't really matter. Those characters don't really matter. What started happening to the personal lives of these superheroes? They started to, not completely, let's be fair and honest, not completely, but in large part, get phased out. So you're seeing these heroes in their costumes being superheroes nearly all the time. Maybe not all the time, but nearly all the time. Again, I point back to like Jeff Johns' Green Lantern. Maybe that 2000s period, mid 2000s on up. That's probably where this really started going into like full gear. But again, like there were things preceding this that kind of led into it, which is basically a philosophy of short-term gain just at the cost of long-term damage. So the short-term gain is that that style of writing was popular at the time. Like Didio like stumbled upon Identity Crisis and then just kept feeding stories into the next thing that moves this whole universe. And it was just going on like that all the time. And at Marvel, you had like Civil War, which of course these things are flying like hotcakes off the shelves. But you see, the thing about me, and I've said this in another video, I am, at the risk again of tooting my own horn, I am not easy to fool. I am not easy to hypnotize. I will notice something like this, even if that is popular at the time. I will notice this is stupid. I'm tired of everybody being in everybody else's books. all these cameos from heroes just popping out of nowhere. I'm tired of these stupid endless string of events and like things leading up to events, like these weekly series like 52 and Countdown and stuff like that. I kind of just want to know more about the lives of these heroes, and I care less about, just the status quo of this universe at large. I'm interested in characters, not, status quo of the universe. And I didn't feel I was getting, my characters really. Like they weren't really the focus. Like it seemed, because for one thing too, the company essentially weaned the readers that those character focused stories, they don't really matter. That's not what they need to be looking at. They need to be looking at what's going on with these events and stuff like that. Whatever just Wonder Woman's doing, it's not that important. And it's only gonna like appeal to the die-hard Wonder Woman fan that's gotta read Wonder Woman anyway. But everybody else knows, you don't need to pay attention to that. The company was like, it seemed to me, either intentionally or not, kind of training the reader to, respond to what they were doing that way. And I think over time, remember what I said at the beginning of this video, I don't really like those events because there is like little character stuff. And yes, I like big, earth-shattering and universe-shattering threats. I am doing Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, for example. But this page 2 is a really good example of like how I feel and what my priorities are. Even though there is this big universe-shattering threat, I do like that. You cannot lose the characters in that. The characters have to be your anchor, for everything. Because that universe-shattering threat by itself, who cares when you don't care about the characters? Who cares what happens to the characters when you don't care about the characters? And when the characters are not the focus, and the focus is just this threat or something like that, you're not going to care about the characters, or you're going to care about them a lot less. And I think we're finally coming down to, the root of the problem, I think. This is what has happened to these comic books, to where, first of all, here's the problem. These events and stuff, just like these variant covers and these like new number ones, we all know you get diminishing returns from all of that. Like you can't, like, you're just going to get diminishing returns from it. Nothing new, nothing groundbreaking, not a groundbreaking thing to say. And eventually, because again, the audience becomes more hip to what you're doing. You can't keep pulling the same tricks on them over and over and over again. They're not going to be shocked by the same types of things. So now these events have happened so much. These crises have happened so much. It's like people are tired of them, and they don't really care when they don't even care when they happen, and nobody even cares what the continuity is because it's been shaken up so many times. So they're checked out on that. So they're checked out on that. So you're not shocking them with your events anymore because they've just seen that too many times. And here's the sad part, I think. They're checked out on the characters because the characters don't matter that much. So here's what we've seen go away. Supporting casts. Like, if a character has a supporting cast these days, they're usually some other superhero. And also, the heroes' lives don't matter that much. They're in costume like all the time. And that might suit some characters, but it wasn't meant to be that way for like it wasn't meant to be that way like for every character, you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of the default for like these comics now. The the lives of the heroes matter less and less. Them just heroing matters more and more. Their supporting casts are like gone, and if they do hang out with anyone, it's usually just some other costume hero. So they start feeling disconnected from their own worlds. One thing that was good about these hero supporting casts is that it showed that the hero still existed in the regular world, kind of, but when all you do is hang out with other costume heroes, okay, that is going to cause like somewhat of a disconnect, because that kind of stops looking like the world that people relate to and that they live in themselves, you know? That's like something that people can't relate to as well. I mean, might work okay for a concept meant to be like that, kind of like Astro City or something, but you know, these characters oftentimes were not meant to, you know, operate that way. They had supporting casts that ground them, that raise the stakes of their comics. Like, you know, when you go back to like Stan Lee and Steve Ditko or John Romita, you know, Aunt May's always sick or something like that. Like, oh no, what's going to happen with Aunt May? Like, the supporting cast raise the stakes of the comics, similar to like what happened with Gwen Stacy in that famous comic with the Green Goblin. But again, when there are no character moments or no characters that people care about, because the comic's not about characters, you have no like stakes that matter to people. And when you have no stakes that matter to people, they check out. And I think that's kind of where we're at now. I think what we're seeing is kind of a result of this this problem. It's like an accumulation of over reliance on events and event style storytelling. Training the reader that the regular comics, i.e. the ones that aren't events, training the reader that those are essentially not the things that they need to be paying attention to. They need to be paying attention to the events, and thus training the reader that the characters aren't necessarily the things they need to be paying attention to. They need to be paying attention to the status quo of a universe. And also, because we're dealing with event-style storytelling, again, and the characters aren't the things we need to be paying attention to, the characters and their lives start becoming less and less important. Their alter egos are nearly gone. In some senses, they're just heroes all the time. The supporting casts are nearly gone, so the heroes only hang out with heroes if they hang out with anybody. And ultimately, I think this leads to a disconnect. All of these factors ultimately lead to a disconnect with readers. Like, they're just not connected. It becomes like the reader kind of stops. I don't think the reader even, many times they might not even consciously realize this. Although like I said, I always realized, like, I don't like this stuff. I always thought that. I just wanted, moments with the characters. And ultimately, it's led to this, where people just don't feel connected with the characters. They feel checked out. They don't really care about what's going on, because, again, if you don't care about the characters, you're not going to care about what's going on. So then it just becomes about, oh, wow, there's a gay Superman. That becomes the thing, not like, oh, how are they going to do this with Superman, or what, like, how is he going to deal with this problem? Now, granted, there are still readers like that, and that is good. Those are like your diehards. But I think when the companies need more diehards like that. The thing about it is, like, these are people who are very, very invested, who care about these characters on like another level. And typically I found that people are only like that for a certain, like maybe one character, like say just a person who's like way into Supergirl, and they're just, but the thing is you can't be like that for too many characters, you know. So you either need, the company would either need more diehards like that, which is always good, or somehow they have to get make it so even people who are less invested, who, you know, that person who's always going to buy Supergirl regardless of anything because they just have to buy Supergirl, um, you got to get more people than just that type of person. You got to get more people to care. And when you like look at like webtoon and stuff, they're not focused on, like, they're typically not focused on some shared universe or something. They're, what the ones that are the webtoons that are successful over there have done has gotten is they have gotten people invested in their stories and their characters, so the people are reading only to find out what happens with the stories and the characters, because that's what they care about, and that's what, like, you need the readers to care about, not anything else, not variant covers, not new number ones, not like the personal life of the writers or the artists, not, you know, of some political stance or something like that. Simply the stories and the characters. What happens next? How are they going to get out of these situations? Now, when you get people caring about that, and you get enough people caring about that, then you know you'll have a healthy book or a healthy industry, a healthy fan base. You know, you can't like get them caring about other stuff. And honestly, that's why I am here simply drawing my comic and talking about comics and, you know, showing people my comic and talking about my comic. Now, here's what I realize. A lot of people aren't going to care about that. They just don't. I can get a lot more videos if, or I'm sorry, I could get a lot more views if I decide to do some drama content that will, like, you know, get people's attention real fast. But, okay, that's short-term gain for long-term damage. The long-term damage will be, I will develop an audience of people who do not care about my comic. And if I want to, and I won't be able to just easily pivot to my comic, because then if I start talking about my comic, those people are going to get upset. They're like, this isn't the type of content that I got into, you know, from Neil Allen. Like, where's all the drama content? That's what I want. And then, so you become reliant on that stuff. So it's a similar type of thing. But, so, you know, I would sooner take the slower path to the top, which is develop a audience of high quality viewers who are likely to convert and get my and buy my comic and read my comic and get invested in my comic. Now, yeah, that's more of a grind, that's a longer climb, but I've seen what happens to these other comic creators and these comic companies. These short-term gains for long-term damage, it's just not a good trade-off in the long run. Better to just be upfront with what you got to offer, and if that and have it there for the people that it works for, and the people who it doesn't, well, you know, they can just go look for something else. Like, what I have to offer is this comic book that you're seeing me work on. Now, I'm just gonna stick to that, you know, because trying to do something else, it's just, yeah, I might be, my views and watch time might spike if I decide to just talk about some spicy drama gossip thing, but in the long run, that is not going to be good for me, and I realize that. So I think that's the problem that these comic companies have come to. They're that short-term gain but long-term damage. They're at the point where this damage is catching up with them, you know, and the best thing I think they can do is kind of pivot to just stories about their characters and just getting people interested in what they're doing without any kind of gimmick. See, now the long-term the thing about this long-term damage, you become reliant on the gimmick. So like drama streamers, that's all they can do now. Like they that and that's all they can do. They can't do anything else. Like that's what their audience is. And like Marvel and DC, it's like it it's looking like they can do something else, but it's looking like we have, like from their point of view, we have to keep launching these new number ones. We have to keep pumping out these variant covers. You know, we have to, like, you know, make our characters gay or something like that. Characters that weren't gay, because how else are we gonna get people to talk about or pay attention to our stuff? You know, and that's just not the way. If I can grind it out, they can grind it out. Just take the steadier approach, and just build your audience organically. Build an audience of people who actually really care about what you're doing, not an audience of people who are there for headlines or drama or number one issues they can bag and board and put away. You can't, like, that's not a healthy audience to have. And if that's the audience you're going for, you're going to, like, always have problems. At some point, if you want to get out of that, you have to have some integrity and some willpower to say, hey, I understand that I can grow quicker, I can get bigger numbers quicker doing this one thing, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sit here, buckle down, and tell the best stories I can possibly tell. And, you know, you just have to keep doing that over and over and over and over again. And you will eventually, like, if you can stick it out, you'll find your audience of people who care about you for the right reasons. And I think, so that's why people are checked out. I think DC and these comic companies built an audience of people who didn't really care for the right reasons. And, you know, it was, again, short-term gain for long-term damage. And now the only way out of that, I think, is to just grind it out, the same as I'm doing here. And even with this video, just keep putting out content and showing up consistently, and do the best you can on that content, and make it so that it's actually sustainable in a healthy manner. You know, that you won't have to, like, rely on cheap tricks and gimmicks and nonsense and noise to, you know, get attention and engagement. You know, and again, there are some models we can look to here, like you know, webcomic creators, people like that who just grind it out, you know, and over time, if they stick with it, and if they're if what they're offering is good enough, many times they will find their audience. But I guess that's all I really have to say for now. Thanks for stopping by, and we got a good amount of Alacazona's hair in here, but she has quite an elaborate hairstyle, so I still have a ways to go. So I'll stick with that, and stay tuned for more content. And be sure to like, subscribe, and check out Zatswan Multiversal Guardian in the link in the description on Amazon.com, and leave reviews if you do. That it helps me to know what you guys think about what I'm doing. I'm open to hearing about that. Alright, I'll talk to you soon. Take care.